When I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh, I was barely ever buying boosters or structure decks. Cause mostly, I didn't need to. In my local card shop, people were buying them and then throwing them away. Or just straight up ripping cards apart when they didn't include what they wanted. Eventually, I ended up building most of my collection from their rejects. And after some trading, I built my decks around with what I had. That's cheap and casual Yu-Gi-Oh because I'm very stingy with my money. So what you are watching right now is me trying to take that mentality for a spin in a modern playground. We exclude what's hollow and focus on the non-shiny things. Because if you look closely, they have some shine as well. So of course I'm inspired by the many people doing this sealed only thing, and I really like watching what they do, but in terms of learning what's up in the game, they lack explanation. Often it's assumed that the audience knows specific cards or archetypes, which to be fair, they probably do. But to kind of do my own thing, I want to make this a strategy developing kind of series, where I, with my limited casual knowledge, want to learn along with the viewer. With this kind of space, I want to offer something that bridges this awkward space between starting out and knowing the ins and outs of the game. And most and foremost, to prove that commons, the most cheapest thing to buy in a game, allows an entry into what competing in this game actually means. Let's establish a few rules for this particular challenge. The budget each time will be $20. We use only commons in our deck. And structure decks can be bought only once. So right off the bat, certain hollow only products are unavailable. And I also don't want to turn this into a buy 3 structure decks with the worst hollows thing, because you get plenty of structure deck videos out there. This is about gaining knowledge and finding card interactions with a limited pool, and I think it's a good skill to develop in order to think outside of the box. Knowing all of that, you can probably get out and find your playstyle easier once you establish what you want to spend your money on, if you want to spend more in the game. The budget can be raised after each round, if we happen to have some good hollow pulls that are worth selling. We won't be using them anyway. So in order to start, I prepared 2 structure decks. You can either say I thought this through and planned ahead, or you can say I took what my local supplier had at the moment. SHADDOLL Showdown even had some dust on it. I will open them up and lay down what we have here. First one is SHADDOLL Showdown. So, we got our shiny cards here as well, and shiny is kind of bad in this challenge. So we gotta get rid of all of those. Quite a lot. SHADDOLLs are a fusion archetype, and that means they have their own fusion spell. But they don't necessarily need this to go into the fusion monsters. They consist of one monster from the SHADDOLL archetype and one monster with very specific attribute. In this case, light. One of the things they all got in common is their interaction with the graveyard. For example, searching their fusion spell upon death. So, fusion spell isn't quite available, but we got plenty of other options as well. We say goodbye to these consistency boosters. And also the best fusion monsters. The light one and the dark one, being Construct and Winder. Though not using them, I sleeve them as well. And put them away because the commons are more important right now. This is our lineup. Here is a little overview consisting of Hound, Falcor, Hedgehog, Squamata, Dragon and Beast. Looking at the main deck, SHADDOLL monsters usually have 2 effects. The first effect is a flip effect on the top. And the second effect is an effect that activates if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, and that includes fusion as well. So they allow some pretty nice loops. Next up is the Pendulum lineup. One is Zephyrcore and one is Zephranaga. And though they have some pretty nice scales, reaching from 1 to 7, they do lock yourself to SHADDOLL monsters if you manage to get them both on the field. And that's quite a small part of our deck. We gotta play something more generic. And more generic support is on its way. All of these cards have some kind of interaction with the graveyard, well, most of them. For example, Armageddon Knight, upon summon lets you send a dark monster from the deck to the grave, or Kuri Bandit, who lets you send the top 5 cards from the deck to the graveyard. Others, like Cerberus, benefit from being in the grave, letting you destroy a monster on the field. And we get Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning, who theoretically is summonable because we have light and dark monsters, and has some nice effects to get rid of opponent cards. And then there is Lava Golem, with one of the best forms of removal. Here is a lineup of all the cards that can help with our fusion. Although instant fusion isn't quite usable right now, because we don't have a level 5 or lower fusion monster. Well, we gotta work with what we have, and this is the generic lineup. We got Allure of Darkness, Foolish Burial, which helps greatly. For our SHADDOLL trap lineup, we got SHADDOLL Core, which helps bring out the fusions, and also Sinister Shadow Games, which helps on bringing the SHADDOLLs to the grave. On the other hand, cards like Necrofusion do help out bring out your fusion monsters, but you gotta set it first and you set up your graveyard first, so might not be the best option. Subterra Succession looks kinda neat. You got flip monsters and you search your other stuff, or you got other stuff and search your flip monsters. Then you got stuff like Never-Ending Nightmare, getting rid of open spell and traps, and Lost Winds, who can get rid of special summoned monsters and sets itself from the grave again. With the traps done, we move on to our extra deck lineup, which is kinda limited, but we can work with it. So first we got El SHADDOLL, and I don't even try to pronounce that name. It shuts down opponent's spell and traps that summon monsters from the hand or the graveyard, which happens sometimes. El SHADDOLL Wendigo is a little neat option for defense, and our SHADDOLL Core helps with setting up potential Wendigo combos, but we don't really plan on going into that too often. SHADDOLL Construct is a neat little link monster that works with flip monsters and can perform the fusion on its own. It also recycles itself. So we gotta sleeve them up now. Upon receiving the waifu sleeve treatment, we move on to our next deck, which is Freezing Chains. We got a lot of shiny cards here as well, but we gotta get rid of them again, and here is a little overview of what we can exclude from our deck. All of the synchros are gone. Though synchro may be the main gimmick, ice barriers also have some effects that work in conjunction with each other. We might be able to figure out something. Wayne here, for example, has an effect that special summons him from the hand if you control an ice barrier monster, and also locks down and searches from the deck your ice barrier spell and traps. Then we got Hexaspirit of the Ice Barrier, a tuner monster that can also set up the grave, for example for things like Prior of the Ice Barrier, who benefits from having monsters in the grave. Though it might not be the most consistent option, we might be able to figure out something later with this guy. In terms of spell and traps, the most useful is probably Medallion, who can search every Ice Barrier monster from a deck. And the others are dependent on how many of them you control, so might not be the best option. We got a few more generic water options, but their inclusion depends on how many of them we decide to run. Okay, there is a small Gen X package which doesn't really make sense at this size, and same goes for the Frog package, but it's kinda neat to have. We also got Where Thou for level 1 monsters, but with 3 level 1 monsters in total, I don't see us running it. And then there are a lot of good generic cards, like Crackdown, Heavy Stormduster and Fiendish Chain. And some side-thinking options as well, with a Pointer of the Red Lotus or Mind Drain. With all of that in mind, let's figure out our next steps. We gotta come up with a deck, and with commons only, our options right now are kinda limited, but that's okay. I think I like the challenge a lot. Let's take a look at what I could come up with. Starting with the extra deck, which is kind of a no-brainer, we got our 3 monsters that we are potentially able to summon. In the main deck we have our 6 SHADDOLL cards. They are neat even at common only level, and I'd even consider them a centerpiece of the deck at this point. We need them to go into the fusion monsters, and are also able to activate their graveyard effects pretty easily with our support. Speaking of support, here are the cards that help with fusion summoning, and Super Poly can also use the opponent cards as well. SHADDOLL Core is a trap monster that can change its attribute to whatever we need. Sinister Shadow Games helps activating the graveyard effects, and last but not least our Searcher in form of Subterra Succession. Then we got our Ice Barrier monsters, who mostly serve as water monsters for our fusion summoning. There are Hexaspirit and Wayne, medium for potentially special summoning. Then there is Gantala to maybe benefit from his graveyard summoning. And we got Dance Princess of the Ice Barrier to give spells and traps back to the hand, and Pyre to potentially benefit from Hexaspirit's effect. And then we play the Searcher, Medallion of the Ice Barrier, which can search us any card we want, even with Wayne's effect. That's not all, there is also Mirror of the Icebarrier, which could potentially have a great impact if the opponent banishes stuff with a monster effect. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that happens at least sometimes and could potentially give us big advantage if it goes off. Moving on with Water Spirit for potentially special summoning, even with Hexa Spirit's help. Going through our generic options, we got Mathematician, who can help us set as the grave. Next one is Performage Trick Clown, who benefits from being there. Then there is Electromagnetic Turtle, who also benefits from being there. And at last Armageddon Knight, who can also set up the grave upon summoning. Summoning, not only normal or special. Next up is Curry Bandit, Pero, and Felice. Fairy Tail's sleeper inclusion is mostly because it's a light monster for BLS, and Lava Golem, whose tribute summon to the opponent's side of the field helps us getting rid of most of the problematic stuff the game has to offer. Then we got Blackluster Soldier, who banishes one light and one dark monster from the graveyard and is potentially very useful, and Dark Armed Dragon, who can also be potentially summoned. I think these two are kind of a neat thing to pull off if we actually manage to get there. For the generic spell and traps, we got Allure of Darkness, and also simple draw power, even though we not only draw dark monsters. Then there is Twin Twister in the main deck, even though I prefer running it at the side deck. And there is Pot of Avarice for potentially drawing 2 cards if we have enough graveyard setup. And Living Fossil to get those graveyard cards back if we need them. Foolish Burial is a no-brainer in a SHADDOLL deck. Then there is Crackdown to potentially steal the opponent's cards, followed up by Fiendish Chain, which can shut down the monster and its effects. And last but not least, there is Lost Winds. For our side deck, we have Unending Nightmare, who could get rid of opponent's face-up spell and traps. Then there's Heavy Storm Duster, Mind Drain, and a Pointer of the Red Lotus, who I don't really like playing in the main deck. I also give you a quick image of the Icebarrier package I decided to include. And Warlock of the Icebarrier is actually a neat side deck option, who can potentially shut down Pendulum decks if we manage to play another Icebarrier. Icebarn if we side in more water monsters, and Necrofusion for potentially fusion upgrading, and pure SHADDOLL Eon. So we put the stuff in EduPro, and I want to mention that I swapped out Defender of the Icebarrier with Dance Princess, just because I find the level more useful in conjunction with Hexa Spirit. Going into the matches, you will soon start to see my lack of experience. Okay, I assumed as soon as I saw Wave Motion Cannon that I was playing a burn deck, and turns out I was mostly right. I wanted to set up my graveyard to play Aqua Spirit, and having Sinister Shadow games in my hand, I was kinda sure that with its set I could play off whatever my opponent comes up with. And I was mostly right. I mean, I was trying to get rid of his Wave Motion Cannon because I was kind of afraid of it, and then my Hex Spirit got destroyed, which is kinda obvious, and I got burn damage. Okay, so I thought, why not fight burn with burn and put a Lava Golem on his side. His burn shenanigans played on the fact that I should have more monsters than him, so I figured Lava Golem might really be a good option. I set SHADDOLL Hedgehog and passed the turn, and he lost more life points. He attacked SHADDOLL Hedgehog, which was kinda neat because I could search my fusion card, but upon drawing Curry Bandit, I changed my strategy. He went in for a quick 2000 damage, and I managed to actually pull some pretty decent stuff out of Curry Bandit's effect. Electromagnetic Turtle is neat to have, and I played Felice. My opponent got the damage, played Dark Snake Syndrome, who would burn everyone equally, but he figured he'd be done quite fast with Lava Golem, so I think the next part he just went into Nightmare Phoenix. Yeah, he took the damage and then he played Ojama Green and went into Nightmare Phoenix. He got rid of my fusion card and weirdly attacked, I don't know what's up with that. Then I decided to go into offensive, and I actually managed to play General Gantala and even Wayne, and decided to attack, and next thing was decided upon his draw, he got some additional damage, played the card and surrendered. Okay, game 2 against a burn opponent, so I sided Unending Nightmare. And even got it first turn, hey. So I said it, he placed his cards, and let's stop here. Don't do what I did. That's like the worst possible option. Okay, Unending Nightmare, and I learned that now, is a spell that not only can destroy face-up spell and traps, but when you activate it you also have to find a target. And the only target in this moment was, you guessed it, Unending Nightmare. I shot my own card for 1000 damage. What a win. Okay, I flipped my dragon, then I gave his card back to the hand and decided to play offensively for this turn. Attacked even with prior, and that was kind of a stupid decision, I think. He activated Wave Motion Cannon upon his turn, activated Ochama Country, who flips our attack and defense. Then he attacked. Okay, let's stop for a second. We're in Ochama Country. We should play by their rules. So I played Aqua Spirit and decided to attack. Upon death, Ochama Pink gave us a useless draw and my opponent started with his true strategy. If you aren't familiar, that is Mystic Mine. It shuts down the player with the most monsters, denying him monster effects and attacks. So let's analyze the situation. I get 2 monsters. My opponent got no monsters. And a time bomb ticking to my inevitable demise. Game 3 starts, and I never thought I'd be able to say that, so at least something is accomplished here. He plays his dragon, who just burns me at the end phase for 500 each time. I draw and play Fairy Tale Sleeper. I get some Ochama tokens, and then he plans on burning me, but something neat kinda happened. Another thing I never thought I'd be able to say is that Fairy Tale Sleeper was actually kinda useful in this situation. Fairy Tale Sleeper has an effect that can turn any normal spell and trap into change a monster your opponent controls face down. So he gets the effect, but I also get to tribute 1 monster from the side effect. So it's kinda circumventing the effect damage from just desserts, but also allowing him to set 1 of my monsters. The next thing my opponent did was playing another Solar Flare Dragon. Then he attacked, and I think this was his switch to playing more offensively. They do make some nice burn damage every end phase, and another thing I didn't realize at this point was Solar Flare Dragon's true power, which comes into play right about now. Okay, you see, Solar Flare Dragon has an effect, okay, the burn damage, whatever, but the first one is, while you control another Pyro monster, this card cannot be attacked, which basically shuts down every kind of attack. So I needed something else, some way of removal, which I didn't have at the moment. Like the previous match, I kinda hoped at this point to draw something which could help me get over this thing, potentially another Lava Golem, but this was a race against time, and the race against time was something I lost. I could pull off the fusion though with Construct, and that's kind of neat. It marks the second time I was able to do that, which is an accomplishment in a way. And the whole burn match was kinda weird. It was such a bizarre lineup of cards, and I'm not really even sure if that's how Mystic Mine decks are played, but okay, whatever. I can't help but wonder about the timeline where I hadn't committed Sudoku in the second turn, or the second match, with Unending Nightmare. But whatever, it's a mistake, I gotta live with it. Moving on, the third game was kinda fun as well. Okay, what we're playing against is a Cyber Dragon deck, but I didn't know that at the time, so I kind of wanted to pull off some kind of icebarrier thing, because that's the only thing I had in my hand. And he started with Machine Duplication and getting some Cyber Dragons out, which was kind of neat. Playing Nova and then Cyber Dragon Infinity. And it's as good a time as any to talk about this guy. He can Omni-negate once per turn, and also eat your monsters or your field setup up by adding it to his own Xyz material. And I think it's really, really good. You can bring it out with 2 Cyber Dragons, and that is something the deck kind of mainly does. And yeah, what a nice opponent to have. Okay, then it kind of devolved into some overly complicated meta strategy, and he played Verte Anaconda, and I thought he was gonna bring out something very specific, but he didn't. He went into the Cyber Dragon who can attack multiple times, ate my material. Funny that he chose Hexa Spirit, and then he just attacked. He has multiple of those, so that was a quick win for him. In the second match he passed turn quite quickly, and I thought, okay, what a nice situation to dish out some damage, but basically the best option I had was Fairy Tale Sleeper. So I attacked, and yeah, I think that was my last turn. I guess he just passed because he knew I wasn't really a threat to him in any way or form. So he brought out Cyber Dragon Victory. I tried something with Hexa Spirit. Maybe I should have gone for Falco, but I think I went into Falco later and that didn't work out as well. I think it wouldn't have mattered ultimately. Yeah, that was my last turn. He played Cyber Dragon Core and got into Almirage. Something field setup. Galaxy Warrior to special summon. And overlaying into Cyber Dragon Noah, and Infinity shows up again. Then there is Verte Anaconda, and then there is this guy. I mention him now because I think I kinda have to, because he will show up in the future, I'm sure of it. That's a fusion between Dark Magician and Red Eyes Black Dragon from the anime, and he can't be targeted, he can't be destroyed, he can negate everything on the field by discarding, he gains attack when doing so, and then can destroy up to 2 cards on the field depending on how you summon him. So it can be brought out pretty easily with effect monsters, and that's kind of the main point. That's why so many people absolutely love him. Okay, I'm kinda kidding. Okay, here is Falco, proving that it didn't really matter. I tried to kind of show what I had, but yeah, no use at this point. I die. Next game, something unexpected happened. Would you look at that hand? That's kinda sweet. Okay, I think I might be able to work out something. My ultimate goal was getting out Dark Armed Dragon from this point. And Courier Bandit kinda helped. He sent a lot of stuff to the graveyard and allowed me to play Felice, so I wasn't completely defenseless. Also, I had a card set that could allow me to proc any SHADDOLL's effect. Yeah, my opponent kind of went into some shenanigans with summoning as well. And it was a blue ice deck. He went into some synchro summoning, then into another synchro who would kind of shoot my card, and then he ended his turn. So the key card here is Subterra Succession. Not only could I search Armageddon Knight from this effect, I could also activate the SHADDOLL effects in the graveyard. And that was kinda neat. I had a Fusion Summon and I could play Dark Armed Dragon. And now take a moment to kind of admire the picture. I think I never thought I'd be able to get out something that could be considered a board. And I attacked. He's got 100 life points left, and I think he bricked. Because he played some cards, and then he just surrendered. And then he left. And I think that kind of plays into why I do this kind of common challenge. I think in any card game you can just get out there, then get whatever's popular at the moment and just play that. But that's no fun at all. The true fun for me, really, is when you play like a crappy deck like this one. And you manage to pull off something really cool and you just look into the people watching at the moment and they're like, ah! Did you fucking see that? They might not get it in a moment, but the fact stands, you just punched someone in the face with a crappy deck. Okay, let's return to reality for a moment. Our opponent did leave, so I kinda wanted to compensate a little bit and started another match. Our opponent this time was playing a ninja deck, and that was kinda interesting. Ninja Pendulum, mind you. I fast forwarded this a little bit, because what wasn't so interesting here were my stupid decisions. The beginning of the match was full of me trying to find something I could play and then falling to the lure of darkness and having to banish my dark armored dragon. And with that gone, I think this was like my only option at playing something that could out him. But as soon as he brought up a white dragon ninja, this match was pretty much done, because this card could protect his back row and his back row could protect his white dragon ninja. I did try to set it into defense, but he was also protected against attacks, as I would later learn. At this point I was pretty much waiting for a situation to arise for my lava golem, which happened because he played 2 monsters, and that was like my only way of getting rid of this lockdown. But I didn't have anything left to protect myself or even build up a board again, so that's where it kinda ended. And upon defeating me and setting out for the last attack, my opponent did something interesting. He wrote in the chat, "You lose Habuzi." And he was even so nice as to include a little left arrow indicating that that was indeed my name. And I just found that funny. Then he attacked and left. Okay, so where does that leave us? The turnout wasn't so bad. I mean, looking at the matches, you can see we even were close to like actually winning, but our opponents left a lot of times, and I guess it's like to be expected if you play random people online, so that can definitely be improved upon. And I should read my cards better. Like, some parts were entirely on me. There is little to no excuse here, but for like 2 structure decks common only fumbled together, I'm pretty happy. We're learning here, I guess, so let's go on to the learnings to improve and actually just get something out of this. My first learning here is Mirror of the Icebarrier is dead most of the time, and that was probably visible to everyone just looking at this card, because the activation clause is kind of very specific. Specific means it probably could get theoretical use in a side deck, but not in the main deck, because you can just ensure that the opponent, for one, uses monster effects that banish, and the second part is that he uses them so frequently that he would have just been totally shut down if you activated this. And it's neat, it's a neat card, it's a neat little idea, but it's not worth like exploring further. The second one is that shaddolls are common only pretty decent, and I was surprised. I really thought like the deck would lose most of its potential when you exclude like the most obvious fusion options. But that wasn't the case at all. So little decks have like a way to go against these when it's sent to the graveyard effect, except for like completely banishing it, so that was pretty neat. The third learning was that Unending Nightmare can unfortunately end if you are incapable of using it. And the last learning is that my name is Habuzi. So what's your input on this? Did I manage to pull off a somewhat capable deck out of what I had, or did I absolutely kill it with my misplays? Any like input is welcome, because I'm trying to improve just as much as the next one. And I think in terms of video editing I learned a lot in this kind of regard. And I think we will see each other in the next one. Bye. El Shaddol Enoyatelis. Boom!